Good evening. Welcome in RN. Good evening. Welcome in RNQ Igino classes. Block number 4, unit number 3, Popperian method and naturalized epistemology. Objectives: our course has dealt with justifications of knowledge rather extensively. In the second block, there were units that dealt with the method of justification adopted by pre-modern thinkers and the foundationalist method of the modern thinkers. The third block had a unit on the linguistic turn of philosophy and the challenge it poses for justification, especially the impossibility of a purely foundational justification. In the last two units of this block, we found that the extreme claims claims about the demise of epistemology is unwarranted. Only the modern kind of foundationalist epistemology is seen to be impossible. A more moderate form, the form of foundationalism that combines some Coranist futures, was advocated in the last unit. In this unit, we shall explore some further developments in contemporary epistemology, especially what epistemology can learn from the practice of the sciences. By the end of this unit, you will be familiar with the basic idea of naturalized epistemology, of a preliminary understanding of the hypothetic deductive HT method, some implications of naturalized epistemology. 3.1 Introduction. Modern Western philosophy is based with a paradox, the tremendous explosion of scientific knowledge on the one hand, and an unscientific approach to theory of knowledge on the other. The modern approach to theory of knowledge, if not unscientific in the sense of going against science, in unscientific at least in the sense that it was not based on what practicing scientists actually do in acquiring knowledge. Naturalized epistemology, including the Popperian method, can be seen as attempts to overcome this paradox of modern epistemology. Both seek to learn from the actual practice of scientists to see how knowledge understood as beliefs that have been justified or given reasons for believing to be true is acquired, and suggests that epistemology should be modeled on their practice. Let us see this in more detail. Hmm. 3.2 Background of naturalized epistemology. The famous philosophical schools of empiricism as well as rationalism are good examples. Philosophical reflections that neglect the actual process of coming of knowledge. The empiricist talk of knowledge through the senses, and the rationalist proclaim knowledge through reason, but both fail to see what we have very little, if any, knowledge that actually comes to us, either from the senses or from reason alone. Most of our knowledge is the result of joint working of the senses as well as the reason. Ignoring this, they try to build their foundationalist epistemologies. Foundationalism, as we saw in the last unit, not only the privileging of some beliefs, whether rational or empirical, but also ambitions to build our knowledge from God's eye view, having no prior beliefs at all. This was the way in which modern thinkers, both empiricists and rationalists, attempt to overcome skepticism. The main difference between them consisted in what it took to be foundational for. हाँ तू खा For the one sense experience was foundational, and for the other under undeniable truths of reason like Descartes' cogito were foundational, with the eventual realizations that a whole edifice of our knowledge can be revealed from the beginning, that two indubitable truths, disillusionment was bound to set in, which in turn leads to relativistic claims. Disillusionment with foundationalism was not the only crisis faced by modern epistemology. There was also the sense that it was powerless even to carry out its main risk of adjudicating cognitive product disputes. Epistemology was seen by the modern thinkers in the role of a judge whose responsibility it was to pass judgments on candidates to truth. Instead, it was seen to engender disputes within its own ranks. For example, how does one adjudicate between empiricism and rationalism? The result of such disputes is that, in spite of its professed goals, the fate of modern epistemology become like that of a village panchayat, originally set up to resolve the conflicts of other in the village, where the judges, instead of resolving the conflict themselves, come to billows. It is against these and other crises faced by modern epistemology that we must see the emergence of naturalized epistemology. 3.3 Naturalized epistemology. One can discuss the naturalistic turn of contemporary epistemology without taking the name of W. B. Quine. His 1969 essay "Epistemology Naturalized" is a landmark. This essay begins with the foundationalist attempts of the empiricists to rebuild the ship of scientific knowledge on the form of foundations of sense experience. Given that we are sure of our sense experience, if on the firm foundations of sense experience, given that we are sure of sense experience, if on the firm foundations of sense experience, given that we are sure of our sense experience, if all other knowledge could be derived from this experience, then the skeptic would be put in this all other knowledge could be derived from the experience. The skeptic would be put in this place. This was the hope, examining the long history of the empiricist attempts to rebuild the body of scientific knowledge. In this manner, Quine comes to the conclusion they have failed. Given this failure of tradition epistemology, Quine suggests that such attempts we give up in place of such epistemology. We need to reconceive epistemology in a new way. His suggestions is that in the new setting, epistemology be seen as an examination of how we come to have our understanding of the world from the sensory stimulations we receive. This is of actual questions to be investigated by physiology, and not a matter for amateur speculations. It is for this reason that he makes the bold claim that epistemology or something like it simply falls into place as a chapter of physiology and hence of natural science. A conspicuous difference between old epistemology and the epistemology enterprise in this new physiology setting is that we can now make free use of empirical physiology, says Cohen. Obviously such a view of epistemology goes against the view that epistemology provides the foundations for science. From these initial suggestions of Quine, naturalized epistemology has developed in various ways, but we will not discuss them all in saying that epistemology simply falls into a chapter of science. Quine would seems to be advocating that we bid for farewell to traditional epistemology and replace it with physiology. This view is known as replacement naturalism. Replacement naturalism, however, is based with difficulties. The most important difficulty was perhaps pointed out by Hilary Putnam. It eliminates the normative or ablative dimension of epistemology. Notions such as a belief being justified, being rationally acceptable, are fundamental to any theory of knowledge. What is important is to notice that these notions are unmistakably normative. Without such normative notions, there can't be any epistemology. The biggest problem with naturalized epistemology, according to Putnam, is that it tends to eliminate such normative notions that focuses exclusively on matters of fact, that is of how we come to have the beliefs we have. Without the normative, the notions of truth itself disappears, since there is no way of arriving at true beliefs without the notions of truth. The notions of evidence disappear, since there is nothing to distinguish right kind of evidence from the wrong ones. For these and other reasons, replacement naturalism is not a popular view today. What is even more remarkable is that in spite of his accommodation to suggestion, he has always pursued normative investigations in his epistemological career. In his latter writing, especially, or in pursuit of truth, Quine has toned down his earlier view of replacement naturalism. A more modest and more popular form of naturalism is called cooperative naturalism. This view does not seek to replace epistemology with a physiology. It holds that will evaluate questions are essential to epistemology. Empirical research from sciences are important and useful for addressing evaluative questions. It holds that empirical findings concerning our physiological and biological limitations and abilities can't fail to be relevant to the study of human knowledge. Moreover, it can be shown and has been argued that a purely a priori armchair armchair approach to epistemology is more than an aberration of modern philosophy than the norm. As Aristotle and Aquinas, for example, begin their epistemology with the physiology of the human knower. In other words, attention of physiology needs to be seen as necessary for epistemology, not as replacing it. The basic difficulty with comparative naturalism seems to be that will it rightly acknowledges the role of physiological findings in the study of human knowledge, its relation to the traditionally important questions of justifications of knowledge, or the relationship between belief and evidence remains unclear. There is also a broader understanding of naturalized epistemology than the views regarding the role of physiology in human knowledge. Such a view can be found in James Maffei's survey article recent work on naturalized epistemology 1990. Maffei identifies the distinguishing future of naturalized epistemology to be offensive to country between science and epistemology. This is a broad characterization. The lends itself to further elaborations. It could even be considered as a vision of cooperative naturalism, although its concern is with sciences in general than only with physiology. Maffei discusses various kinds of continuity between sciences and epistemology. We shall limit our discussion or to such continuous continuities, the methodology and the contextual. This can be seen as the responses to the two cries we have mentioned: methodology continuity as a response to internal conflicts, and a contextual continuity as a response to the crisis of foundationalism. 3.4 Contextual continuity between science and epistemology. Contextual continuity is the idea that epistemology, like science, does not start with rock bottom foundations that presupposes no other beliefs. On the contrary, both sciences and epistemology are embedded in specific contexts and hence have their presuppositions. Think of the example we considered in the last unit, the case study of how Dr. Semmelweis found solutions to the uh, problem of childbed fever. We see that Semmelweis is not interested in undoing and rebuilding the whole of medical knowledge of his times, much less the whole of human knowledge. Rather, as a trained physician, he takes for granted the medical science of his times, but then he comes across a problem for which he had no ready-made solution. It is this problem that prompts his experiments. Contextual continuity claims that this applies not only to the science but to all knowledge. Naturalized epistemology then does not seek to rebuild the whole of human knowledge from a for absolutely certain beliefs as the foundationalist attempted to do. Rather, it begins by taking for granted a lot of beliefs that are not problematic. Taking all such beliefs for granted, it focuses upon beliefs that are problematic. Proper such a strong advocate of contextual continuity that he goes to the extent of saying that any rational theory, no matter whether scientific or metaphysical, is rational only because it is an attempt to solve certain problems. Science since naturalized epistemology does not begin with a 0 point, it retains some features of currentist justification popularly identified with Neutro's both metaphor. We have already seen our knowledge is like a ship and stimulus is like the voyager in the ship in the middle of the sea. Even if he notices that this ship is leaking, he can't come to shore to repair it or get a new one. All that can be done is to repair is even while remaining in it. For that he stands for planks that are relatively healthy and tries to replace other parts that are leaking. So too, without knowledge, taking for granted those beliefs that are relatively unproblematic, we try to replace those beliefs that are problematic. On the other hand, science is not a purely currentist either. Notice that there are observable consequences on the basis of which Semmelweis rejects or accepts a hypothesis. This takes us to a discussion of scientific method and the methodological continuity between science and epistemology. 3.5 Hypothetic deductive method. When we examine the procedure employed by Semmelweis, we find that it has three basic steps. One begins with a problem he confronted, namely that high death rate due to childbed for fever in the first division of the hospital. Two various tentative solutions called hypotheses are suggested as possible solutions to the problem. Three those hypotheses are tested to see which of them, if any, is rationally acceptable. A series of five hypotheses were rejected in this manner, and six that occurred to him merely with chance came to be accepted on the basis of evidence. Since it begins by identifying a problem and tries to find solutions to it, this model of knowledge is sometimes referred to as a problem solving model. It is called Popper 1902 to 94, one of the best known philosophers of science of the 20th century, who made this method the corner stone of his philosophy. What is crucial to the method is the third step of testing a hypothesis. There are two things to be noted about the third step. The first is the distinction between discovery and justification be made in the last unit. No hypothesis is accepted just because it seems to offer a solution, or because it was suggested by a celebrity, or because it was once pet idea. The genesis of an idea is not important. What is important is the processes of justification. Only a hypothesis that can withstand a rational scrutiny is accepted, others are rejected. Justification is a matter of logic. Consider, for instance, what prompts Samuel wish to abandon the third hypothesis that the deaths were caused by rough handling by the medical students. And the medical students open scrutiny. Semmelweis found that the midwives who attended to the patients in the second divisions examined the patients in much the same manner as the medical students did in the first division. Therefore, prima facie, the hypothesis is false. Even then he decides to test it. He reduced the number of medical students in the first division by half on an experimental basis. Only when this measure failed to bring down the death rate was this hypothesis abandoned. The face that acceptability of hypothesis is a matter of logic is important in as much as it eliminates the danger of subjectivity. This is involved in the search for certainty. It is for this reason that Popperian epistemology is epistemology without a knowing subject. To use to use proper own words, it means that in checking whether a belief is true, the individual physiology of the believer is not important. A proposition can be checked for its truth even if one believes it. The second thing to be learned about the third step is the kind of logic that is used. The reasoning is in the form of a hypothetical syllogism. If the hypothesis P high mortality rate is due to through rough handling by medical students is true, then by doing action or reducing the number of medical students, an observable consequence of Q low mortality rate would follow. Action is undertaken by the result does not follow. Therefore, the hypothesis is abandoned as false. The argument has the following form: if P, then Q, not Q, therefore not P. Since this procedure involves deducing of an observable consequence from a hypothesis and observing whether that consequence really obtains, this method is called hypothetical deductive HD method, leaving out other complexities involved in the actual practice of the method. The logical procedure seems simple enough if a logically deduced observable consequence of the hypothesis does not obtain, then the hypothesis is to be considered false. What needs to be carefully noted is that this procedure only helps us refute or falsity or hypothesis and not to validate or prove it. For this reason, this method is also called the falsifications method. One might object, why should it be considered suitable only for refuting a theory? After all, they if not enable Semmelweis to accept that the least theory is true. Yes, he did accept the last hypothesis. The hypothesis was that the high mortality rate in the first division was caused by the cadaveric matter unconsciously introduced in the bloodstream of the woman by the medical students. It was assumed that this happened because the medical students came to examine the woman without taking enough care to clean their hands properly. After came to examine the woman without taking enough care to clean their hands properly. After performing autopsy, if this assumption were true, if it would solve the problem, but how to know if it is true? If it had to be tested. In order to test this hypothesis, he asked the medical students to clean their hands through thoroughly before attending to the woman. The result was a significant improvement in the situation, and based on this observation, Semmelweis accepts this hypothesis. As true. Well, this is what happened. As a matter of fact, there's the observation that clean hands led to a decline in the morality that logically prove the hypothesis true. Let us examine its logic. It has the following logical form: if P then Q therefore P if does not take long to see that that is not a correct form of argument, rather it's fallacious argument known as the fallacy of affirming the consequent. The following example will make the fallacy clear. If it rains, the ground will be wet. The ground is wet, therefore it is rained. The obviously is not correct argument, as the ground could become wet in other ways than by rain. Somebody could have watered it. The point is that through a hypothesis is accepted as true for all practical purposes, it can't be logically proved to be true, even if numerous experiments have shown that the expected observational results follow. Still, the hypothesis is not logically proven, can't be proven either. At best, those numerous supporting observations can be taken as confirming the hypothesis. They given us evidence for considering the hypothesis true, but that is not the same as logically proving it. No true statement can be logically proved, but something that is not true can be shown to be false. 3.6 Methodological continuity between science and epistemology. At the heart of methodological continuity lies the reflexivity of the knowing process. It begins with the assumptions that we already have some knowledge. We examine the knowledge with a view of discovering the canons of and principles through which we have come to processes it. In other words, by examining what we already know, we come to understand the method of knowing, and by applying that method, we can learn more about the world. But what we have learned about the method of knowing can be applied not only for knowing more about the world, it can also be applied to the process of knowing itself. It is for this reason that coined descriptions of neutralized epistemology as science self-applied is a good one. The idea of epistemology as self-applications of method is very important in the light of the second crisis of epistemology we have discussed, namely the internal conflicts in epistemology. We saw that although modern epistemology aimed at setting disputes regarding truth and knowledge, it ended by creating more disputes within its own ranks, like a must first of all puts its own house in order. It is trying to put its own house in order that epistemology discovers the value of methodological continuity, since epistemological aims at setting cognitive disputes to the extent that epistemology itself makes controversial knowledge. It claims the method it applies to others must be applied also to itself. The perennial demand. Heal theory. They self lies at the heart of methodology continuity between science and epistemology. It naturalized epistemology is a matter of applying a method used for knowledge about a word of the process of knowing itself. What is that method healing applied? Although I have considered the HD method is some details and tried to say that epistemology Epste- tried to say that epistemology can also learn from it was should not go to the other extreme to of identifying epistemology with the HD method. There are also differences, therefore we should not take the continuity of method to mean identity or sameness or method. What continuity implies is that there are significant similarities in the methods of knowing, while there could be differences in the various method of human knowing. There is a core dynamics of the knowing processes that is common to the different method. It is this dynamics of knowing that is indicated by methodological continuity. The core dynamics of HD method be spelled out in terms of the three steps be enumerated: finding a problem, suggesting possible solutions, and testing them. An important difference between epistemology and science is that epistemology is the theory of knowledge of all kinds, where science is one kind of knowledge, being a theory of knowledge applicable to different kinds of knowledge. We should not expect epistemology to follow exactly the same method that is followed by one kind of knowledge science. Keeping this basic difference in mind, we can reformulate the three steps of involved in HD method in the following manner. 1. Clarifying the problem. In the case of Semmelweis, the problem was very clear. It concerned the high rate of deaths in the hospital, but epistemology being the general kind of inquiry, it is the problem are often not very clear. Very many different issues are often mixed up. Therefore, this is abundant need for analysis and clarification so as to find the exact problem for which a solution is sought. To take simple example, we often talk about the problem of truth, but there is the one problem of truth. There are several. Is the issue the meaning of truth? What is truth? Or whether a given statement is true? Is it true that water has been found on the moon? Or the criterion for deciding something to be true on what basis shall be decided whether a given statement is true? The second question is an empirical one, and the philosopher concern is with the other two, but in a given context one must be clear as to which of the two is being we deals with. This calls for clarity. This is only an example. So too with other epistemological problems. 2. Describing the phenomena. Once a problem is identifying, there are some phenomena that are relevant to the particular problem. Of phenomena is something that is available to all, either by looking out or by looking into one's consciousness. These relevant phenomena need to be described, and the relevant ones kept out. Something similar is there in HD method too. In the given example of Semmelweis, the phenomena relevant to the problem include the fact that the fact that the death rate in the other division is lower. There are no reports of epidemic in the town. Mortality rates among the road birth cases are low, and so on. All of these are external facts, but in epistemology there are likely to be also phenomena that are not external but to be found only by looking beyond consequences. Philosophers have always been experts in looking into one's from whatever source it can find. It attention to outside sources, including various signs. This makes naturalized epistemology inherently an interdisciplinary affair. 3. Finding a current account of the phenomena. This corresponds to the testing of a hypothesis in HD method. Similar ways could predict observational consequences of the hypothesis B was testing, but there is hardly has any place for prediction in epistemology. In its place, epistemological theories need to be tested by checking whether the theory is able to give a current account of the relevant phenomena. A theory that is able to account for all the phenomena must be accepted, others improved or even rejected. But this is not a matter of coherence between beliefs, as Coherentist method of justification suggests. Rather, it is a coherence of phenomena where phenomena are understood as non-controversial observational data, the data available either through the senses or the mind. Thus, we see that there are similarities and differences between the methods of science of epistemology. 3.7 Some implications of naturalized epistemology. One result of foregoing foundational ambitions is the acceptance of the fallibility of knowledge. What is accepted as true in science today may be replaced something else tomorrow. Proper would say that the scientific theories are like to building built on piles erected in a swamp. We stop drilling the piles deeper, not because we have reached firm ground, but because we are satisfied that the piles are firm enough to carry the structure, at least for the time being. This can be said of other kinds of knowledge too. Fallibility of knowledge then is one of the major implications of contextual continuity. A second implications concern the goal of epistemology. Having accepted that human conditions is like that, the neutrosailors in the sea, naturalized epistemology can't hope to Having accepted that human conditions is like that, the sailors in the sea naturalized epistemology can't hope to rebuild the whole edifice of knowledge anew as the foundationalist hope. What does it seek to do then? Proper would say that the central problem of epistemology is the growth of knowledge, not that of confronting skeptics. This is related to the reflexive character of epistemology. We have mentioned reflecting upon what we already know. We discern the dynamics of knowing and applying the dynamics to what is not known. We increase out knowledge, although comforting skeptics is not its primary task. Naturalized epistemology does not shy away from that task, but it does not consider global skepticism where everything can be put to doubt at once as a serious option. This follows directly from the acceptance of contextual continuity.